So, thank you for stopping by. My name is Richard Pepper. I appreciate your attendance here. Have a drink here. The focus of this video is going to be on the racial undertones of the Democratic debates for Democratic presidency and some of the terror that is building up on this question of hypersonic missiles. I read a report, you can find it online, of the RAND Corporation, where they go over where we've been with hypersonic missiles and where we're going. We talked about this in another video, but just to bring everybody up to date, excuse me. The issue of hypersonic relates to the speed of the missile. Hypersonic missile will travel 5+ times speed of sound. You can see that this makes a tremendous risk if you get up to, they're talking about 10 or 15 times the speed of sound. We have missiles that are going to be able to kill people by tens of millions in less than 20 minutes. And the problem is that the three major countries that are pursuing this, the United States, China, and Russia, have all demonstrated that they're not going to give this technology up. But it's a given that we're going to go into this hypersonic missile reality. It's going to be a real game changer. Now, it's interesting to see how almost fearful the RAND Corporation scientists are on this missile issue, this hypersonic missile issue. Typically, we think of the RAND Corporation as a member of the so-called military-industrial complex, which is supposedly pursuing nuclear or other military advantages at the expense of the civilian sector. We think of the civilian sector as being fearful, and the military sector as being, industrial military sector is being brave and willing to take enormous risks. When you read this RAND report, you see that in fact the real experts, the real technical experts that see the possibilities of hypersonic missiles have become fearful. We can see, number one, what this will do to the so-called hardline defense that has been in place since the Cuban Missile Crisis, shortly thereafter. It's going to completely annihilate and cancel the advantages of having a hotline between Russia and the United States, because these missiles are going to come so fast, nobody's going to have a chance to talk to anybody. So this is a real practical problem that's developing. Now, I say, it was in my book, Nuclear Weapons and the Blue-Eyed People, which I published approximately 12 years ago. I said that that nuclear weapons are going to become a much bigger problem, a much bigger practical problem for the United States and the other Western countries than was generally believed or apprehended by the establishment. I'm going to read you what I wrote on the back blurb of this book. North Korea is a small, poor peasant society because Koreans, like their East Asian neighbors, the Chinese and the Japanese, score very, very well on IQ tests that measure quantitative abilities. North Korea may pose an incredible nuclear threat to North America, with all its success and wealth. North Korean and Chinese dictators know that once they have enough nuclear weapons to threaten millions of Americans with death in less than an hour, that's the reality it's coming at you with hypersonic missiles. They do not have to fear an attack by an idealist acting under the moral imperative to go over them and kill people to do good. That was a result of my basically disgust at the Bush administration and the attack on Iraq. Totally unnecessary, totally dangerous, and has led to a catastrophe we've got today in the Middle East. Now, let me talk a little bit about some details. Let me get some notes here. I used the example. I used the term Italian Americans in the title to this video because what happened with Italian Americans in the United States is basically the a little bit lower. To Italian Americans in the United States, this basically designates the factors that have put the United States and other Western countries in a bad position vis-a-vis China and North Korea today. Let me show you something. 80 years ago, 70 years ago, you could find texts that stated that Italian Americans had a 15-point IQ deficit vis-a-vis the American norm, the so-called blonde Americans, average American, white America, which basically is composed of Englishmen and Germans. But we see that if you go into the census of 1970, Italians by 1970 were doing as well as the native-born white and native-born parents. I said it's not possible that there could be a 15-point IQ deficit. What we see is what happened with Italian Americans is what happened with Koreans, North Koreans, and now it's happening with Chinese. That Italian Americans came from a society in southern Italy where they were not in school. Women maybe had 1 year of school. Men might have had 3 or 4 years of school. So they start off, I'm going to show you this, Italian males, foreign born, 45 to 64 year Italian males. I don't know if you can see this or not. I'll go over it, but I just want to show you the basic setup that I have now. Foreign-born Italian Americans, age 45 to 64, were only 15% classified as professional, technical, managerial, or administrative. This is the top group. This is the more intelligent people doing professional things, administrative things. But the native-born, the children of that generation, the native-born of foreign Italian Americans, were almost 31.8%. Now, if we transfer this to native white or native parents, if you do the same comparison, 45 to 64 group, which of course were born in the United States, had 27%. So they had they had roughly a quarter, a little over a quarter of their population in the top administrative professional category. Their children, 25 to 44 group, had about 31%. Well, that's virtually identical with Italian Americans. So Italian Americans basically caught up between the 1920s and 30s, 1970s to the 1970s, because the IQ distribution, I believe, of Italian Americans is roughly similar to the IQ distribution of the native-born white and native-born parents. Now, I'm going to read you a response from a psychologist who had charged that Italian Americans were examples, he put it, of a population where the less intelligent, in fact, immigrated to the United States. Dear Mr. Pepe, thank you for your interesting letter of April and the enclosed data. I sent him an earlier version of that paper that I showed you. With that graph showing that Italian Americans were 31% by the 1970s as professionals or administrators, which compares very well with the native-born white and native-born parents. I think the problems you have are not problems for the theory at all. The findings could have been predicted from genetic theory. The phenomenon of regression to the mean ensures that even if you start out with a specially selected, low-scoring subpopulation, future generations result from an interbreeding of the subpopulation will regress more and more to the mean of the total population, which one imagines would be 100 for Italians, Greeks, etc. I think I discussed the problem of regression in my book, The Measurement of Some Detail. With best wishes, yours sincerely, H.J. Heisen. Now, he was a real authority. He's dead now, but I was very pleased to get his response. It was a very, very courteous thing to do. But I think that he was wrong, because what we see with Italian Americans basically catching up to the major population, the native-born white or native-born parent, in income and job status and education, happened across the board. Happened to Portuguese, happened to Greeks, happened to the Slavs. But all of these populations came from groups that did not have school systems for all of the boys. Once these school systems were instituted, we see that the reality of the bell-shaped curve becoming visible. That is, the more intelligent people on the right-hand side of the curve could become professionals and administrators. But they needed a school system to do that. Now, when you come to China, you start to talk about the threat of nuclear weapons being tied to hypersonic missiles. Now you're talking about real threats, because the Chinese, a lot of them, they're very smart, and now they're all in school. And we see in the United States a process that Chinese have undergone in China. That Huawei has been a subject that probably most of the people that listen to this video will have heard about. Huawei is a company that is a first-class leader in internet technology. And the argument is the technology now is better than what American technology is. Well, I don't know if that's so or not, but it doesn't have to be better. It has to be as good. And by every source that I've read, everybody concedes that certainly it's very good. The same bundle of characteristics that make Huawei successful, the same characteristics that are going to make China successful with its program for hypersonic missiles. There really is no good defense against hypersonic missiles today. And this leads some of the experts at the RAND Corporation saying, we better get away from just threatening to shove everything down the throat of China and Russia if they don't agree with us. We better get them on board saying that what advances the United States, China, and Russia make in hypersonic missiles, the big three, should be restricted to the big three. That is, we should agree among ourselves not to allow other countries, particularly Muslim countries. Maybe that's my thought, it's my feeling, to get this terrifically dangerous missile system in where they could strike the United States or Russia or China. Now, the Democratic debates have been filled with issues of race, and there's no question that racial issues are very important, particularly important to a major source of the Democratic vote, the Democratic Party vote, which is, of course, black people. Blacks have not been treated fairly. I guess no one denies that. Although my opinion is blacks have been better off here than they would be in Africa. But neither here nor there for the purpose of this debate. Should blacks be entitled to reparations? To me, I don't think they should be. I don't think it's fair to the white people. Everybody had slaves. The only people that are being asked to give reparations are white people. The black Africans had slaves. Why aren't people asking black Africans to make reparations? Asians had slaves. North Africans had slaves. Every society had slaves, practically. And the only people that are being asked to provide some kind of reparations are white people in the United States. That's not fair. I want to be fair, however, to black people, and that's why I mentioned Boyce Watkins and Yvette Carnell in the title. Boyce Watkins is a very interesting, knowledgeable economist. He has a PhD and he understands the issues, and he has the impulse of a man that believes in capitalism. I believe in capitalism. We're all products of our experiences to a certain extent. And part of the reason I believe I favor capitalism is because what I've lived through. And I've lived through some tremendous developments. In capitalism, the ability of companies to compete are largely responsible for much of these improvements. Let me tell you the story of the air conditioning, the room air conditioning. I bought my first air conditioner in 1968. It cost me what was then roughly 2 weeks pay, almost $140. That was my vacation money. I took that money when I left one job and went to another job. I had my vacation money
given to me. And rather than go on a vacation, I bought this air conditioner. It was heavy. It was a great thing to have when I needed it in this small hot room that I was renting in a little room in Brockton, Mass. But it was beautiful to have. It was heavy and noisy, however. And remember, it cost $140, which represented approximately 2 weeks' pay. Today, you can go to an air conditioner and get an air conditioner that's lighter, less noisy, pollutes much less, and most important, cost maybe 1/10 in real terms what it cost then. I mean, $140 is 2 weeks' pay. Today, you can buy an air conditioner for 1 week's pay. At least, your basic, whatever, 5,000-6,000 BTU air conditioner. Now, that improvement reflects competition. We have different companies making air conditioners, and they compete with each other. And it finally, 50 years later, we see the beautiful advantages in the air conditioning industry that competition gave us. Now, is this a big deal? I claim it is a big deal. And it's a big deal for black people as well as white people, because black people probably need air conditioning more than white people when you have these tremendous heat waves. I heard a public official, I think he was a doctor, public health official, talk about air conditioning. And he made the point that people think about air conditioning as this little bauble, this little incidental thing that we have. But he says we have people, particularly in these big cities, Chicago, Detroit, in these enormous slums, that are really threatened when we have these tremendous heat waves. We have deaths. And he made the point, we have years where more people die from heat prostration than any other public weather factor. Now, so I think Boyce Watkins is right to work on and try to get black people, to accept the advantages and to work on their ability to function in a capitalist society better. And that's in contrast with Yvette Carnell, who seems to basically to see the American economy as nothing but a source of pain, manipulation, and exploitation of black people. I don't think that's fair. I think that Yvette Carnell she's obviously an intelligent woman, and I don't know what the situation is between her and Boyce. There's some personal history there that has made this kind of unpleasant between them. But they're both intelligent, and from an outsider or white guy, it is interesting to see how differently they look at things. But the major impulse, anyway, of this video is that we've got to see where we are with nuclear weapons and this impending development of hypersonic missiles, and whether or not we're going to be able to do the intelligent thing and work something out with China and Russia. Just a couple more points on the threat that these things represent. I've heard a recent video by Joe Biden telling us how tough he's going to be on Russia. And I've heard just recently a video by Newt Gingrich telling us how tough we're going to be on China. But I understand that China and Russia are competitors with the United States. But there has to be an understanding that China and Russia represent forces that cannot be completely dismissed, and that we cannot conquer them. That once they have what they have today, maybe a nuclear arsenal to kill everybody in America. So we've got to be able to work with China and Russia, and we got to be able to somehow develop a program to control what happens with the spread of hypersonic weapon systems. Anything else I wanted to make here? Let me read you something. This is from an ad. I've read this before, but I find it fascinating. It shows you how the enthusiasm that Americans had for nuclear weapons 50 or 60 years ago has basically thrown away as Americans realize that America is going to be subject to the same nuclear threat as everybody else. I say in my book, consider the buoyant optimism from an ad in a popular magazine from the mid-50s. Quote, at any moment, day or night, SAC's training operations can be changed into combat operations, unleashing mighty retaliatory nuclear strikes against the war-making power of any aggressor anywhere. They thought they were going to be able to attack other countries with SAC missiles, SAC bombers rather, and they would not have any risk. And of course, in 1956, when this ad appeared, that was true. But in the next 6 years, Russia developed nuclear missiles, which basically the United States did not have any effective defense against. And we had the terrifying reality of the Cuban Missile Crisis. People who remember that will never forget it. All right. Well, thank you. If you enjoy this, please give me a like button. Appreciate it. Thank you.